The sun rose gently over the rolling fields, painting the sky with soft streaks of orange and pink. Birds sang in the trees, and the fresh morning air carried the faint scent of soil and wildflowers. In the heart of this peaceful landscape lived a young farmer named Alina. Her life was simple yet full of purpose. Each day she woke before the sun to tend to her crops and care for her animals, finding joy in the quiet rhythm of the farm. Though her hands were calloused from years of work, and her body often ached from long hours in the fields, there was a sense of pride in everything she did. Every seed she planted and every furrow she plowed was a small victory, proof that hard work and patience could yield results. Alina lived alone, but she was never lonely. She found companionship in her animals and the land itself. Her small farmhouse, made of warm wood and stone, stood at the edge of a vast field of wheat. Beyond the field, gentle hills stretched as far as the eye could see, dotted with wildflowers and shaded by ancient trees. In the mornings, Alina would feed the chickens, making sure each one had enough to eat. She would check on her goats, ensuring they had fresh water and healthy hay. Then, with a deep breath of the crisp morning air, she would move to the fields, her hands steady as she worked the soil. The work was hard, but it was honest, and Alina felt connected to something larger than herself: the land, the seasons, and the quiet pulse of nature. Despite the calm, there was something unusual about this place. Strange lights occasionally flickered in the sky late at night, though she could never tell what they were. Odd tracks sometimes appeared near the edge of the forest, as if something or someone had passed through without leaving a clear trail. At first, she dismissed these things as tricks of the moonlight or the marks of wild animals. But as time went on, she began to notice that these small mysteries seemed to come closer to her farm. Yet Alina was not one to be frightened easily. Her life had taught her to rely on her instincts and to face challenges with a steady heart. She believed that as long as she worked hard and stayed alert, nothing could truly harm her. Alina's mornings followed a pattern, each step familiar and comforting. After feeding her animals and checking the fields, she would gather water from the well and carry it back to the house. She cooked her breakfast over a small wood stove, enjoying the smell of fresh bread and the warmth of tea. Sometimes, she would pause for a moment, standing at the window to watch the sunrise fully illuminate the land. The sight of golden fields waving gently in the breeze never failed to fill her with a quiet sense of wonder. Life on the farm was peaceful, predictable, and safe, or at least that was how it seemed. One particular morning, as Alina walked toward the fields, she noticed something unusual. The wheat, which usually swayed in the breeze with a soft golden glow, seemed oddly still. The birds that normally filled the air with song were silent, perched quietly in the trees as if holding their breath. Alina frowned, instinctively alert. She slowed her steps and scanned the horizon, trying to see if a storm was approaching or if some animal had caused the disturbance. But there was nothing, just the same rolling hills and scattered trees she had known all her life. A shiver ran down her spine, not from cold, but from the strange feeling that someone or something was watching her. Shaking off the unease, she continued her work. She began tending the wheat, pulling out weeds and carefully inspecting the plants for signs of disease. The routine helped calm her, and she reminded herself that her farm had always been a place of safety. Yet, even as she worked, she could not completely ignore the feeling that the ordinary world around her was shifting. Something unseen was out there, beyond the edges of her fields, moving silently in the shadows. By mid-morning, Alina had finished her initial chores and decided to rest for a while under the shade of a large oak tree near the edge of the field. She wiped the sweat from her brow and took a deep drink of water, closing her eyes for a moment to listen to the quiet hum of nature. The gentle rustling of leaves, the distant chirping of birds, and the occasional buzzing of bees were soothing. And for a moment, she allowed herself to forget the strange feeling that had lingered since sunrise. Her life had always been one of balance between work and rest, solitude and connection, simplicity and unexpected challenge. As she rested, her mind wandered to thoughts of the future. Alina wondered what life might hold beyond the hills and fields she had always known. Would she ever leave this place, or was she destined to spend her life here, tending the land that had been in her family for generations? The thought both comforted and unsettled her. The farm was her home, her sanctuary. But there was a part of her curious about the world beyond the familiar horizon. Suddenly, her attention was drawn to a faint, unusual glimmer in the distance. At first, she thought it might be sunlight reflecting off a distant pond or a trick of the morning light. But as she watched more closely, the glimmer moved in ways that no natural reflection could. It was subtle, almost hidden among the hills, yet undeniably there. Alina's heart quickened, not with fear, but with the sudden awareness that her life of quiet routine might be about to change. She did not yet know what was approaching, but instinct told her that this was no ordinary day on the farm. She stood and straightened her back, her hands brushing against the worn fabric of her shirt, ready to face whatever came. Alina had spent her life preparing for challenges, even if she had never imagined one like this. With the wind in her hair and the sun high in the sky, she took a deep breath and stepped forward, moving toward the source of the strange light. Her mind was clear, her instincts sharp, and her heart steady. Whatever lay ahead, she was determined to face it with courage. The world beyond her farm, mysterious and unknown, was waiting. And for the first time, Alina felt that her life was about to take a turn she could never have predicted. The strange light that Alina had seen from her oak tree moved slowly across the fields. At first, she thought it might be the reflection of the sun on some piece of metal, but as she walked closer, the glow seemed to pulse, as if it had a life of its own. Her heart beat faster, not with fear, but with a strange mixture of curiosity and caution. She had spent her entire life in the safety of her fields, yet something about this light told her that the ordinary rules of her world might not apply today. As she stepped closer, the ground beneath her feet seemed to hum slightly, a vibration so subtle that it was almost impossible to notice. The wheat around her swayed strangely, not with the wind, but as if responding to the presence of something nearby. Alina's instincts sharpened. She had always relied on her intuition when tending the farm, whether predicting weather, sensing the moods of her animals, or noticing the faintest sign of disease in her crops. Now those instincts told her that she was not alone. Then, suddenly, the air ahead shimmered like heat waves rising from the earth on a hot day. Alina blinked, unsure if her eyes were playing tricks on her. And then, as if stepping out of a dream, a figure appeared in the middle of her field. It was unlike anything she had ever seen before. Tall, with a lithe, almost metallic body, the being had sharp, angular features and eyes that glowed softly in the dim light. Its movements were smooth and precise, like a predator observing its surroundings. Yet there was a sense of intelligence behind the gaze. Alina froze for a moment, unsure whether to run or stand her ground. Fear rose in her chest, but it was mixed with awe. She had heard stories of strange creatures in the world, but she had always assumed they were just tales, meant to entertain or frighten. Now, standing before her, was living proof that the universe was far larger and stranger than she had ever imagined. The alien combatant tilted its head slightly, as if studying her, its eyes flicking over her small frame and simple clothing. For a moment, it was impossible to tell what it intended. Then it made a small gesture with one of its hands, pointing toward her. Alina's mind raced. Was it asking her to move, to leave? Or was it a warning? She did not know, but she remembered the lessons her father had taught her about staying calm and observing before acting. She slowly raised her hand in greeting, a simple gesture of peace. The alien hesitated, then mirrored the gesture slightly, though the movement was not quite the same as hers. It seemed to communicate without words, its body language deliberate and precise. Alina realized that this being was intelligent, capable of thought, perhaps even capable of understanding her in some way. She took another cautious step forward, keeping her eyes on it. Suddenly, the alien's posture changed. Its limbs tensed and a small device on its wrist began to glow. Alina's heart leapt into her throat. Was it preparing to attack? She ducked instinctively behind a clump of wheat, her mind racing for a plan. She had no weapons, no tools, nothing but her own instincts and the knowledge of her land. And yet something inside her stirred, a quiet, determined courage that had always helped her face challenges before. The alien moved forward, its steps silent but deliberate. It seemed to be testing her, gauging her reaction. Alina knew she could not stay hidden forever. She took a deep breath and ran toward the nearest tree, hoping the dense branches would provide some cover. As she moved, she noticed the alien shifting, slightly, adjusting its stance as if reacting to her every motion. It was fast, far faster than any animal she had ever seen. Yet somehow, through a combination of luck and instinct, she managed to keep a small distance between them. Then, almost without thinking, Alina tripped over a root and fell to the ground. She expected the alien to strike immediately, to end the encounter with a single precise blow. But to her surprise, it hesitated. Its glowing eyes narrowed, and it tilted its head again, as if confused or intrigued. Seizing the chance, Alina scrambled to her feet and grabbed the nearest tool, a wooden hoe she had left leaning against a fence post. It was far from a weapon, but she held it defensively, ready to swing if necessary. In that instant, something remarkable happened. The alien moved toward her, but its steps were clumsy, almost as if it had misjudged the terrain. The hoe, wielded more by instinct than skill, struck the alien's arm. There was no pain, no serious injury, but the alien stumbled backward, slightly off balance. Alina could hardly believe what had just happened. She had not intended to fight. It had been pure chance, yet somehow she had managed to defend herself, even if only for a moment. The alien recovered quickly, its movements returning to the smooth, calculated precision that had made it so intimidating. It did not attack immediately. Instead, it seemed to study her, as if reassessing her abilities. Alina lowered the hoe slightly, realizing that the confrontation had entered a strange, unspoken negotiation. She was small and human, yet something about her instincts, her quick reactions, and perhaps the unpredictability of her actions had earned its attention. Time seemed to stretch as they faced each other. The alien made small movements, testing her again, but Alina remained alert, ready to respond. She noticed the subtle details, the way it adjusted its stance, the faint hum of the device on its wrist, the slight tilt of its head when observing her. Every instinct she had developed on the farm, every lesson learned from years of observing animals and nature, came into play. She was not a soldier nor a warrior, yet she felt a strange sense of readiness, as if the earth itself had prepared her for this moment. Then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the alien seemed to step back. It made no aggressive move, no sudden strike. Instead, it gave a slight nod, almost imperceptible, and turned, moving back toward the shimmer in the air from which it had emerged. Alina stood frozen, her heart pounding, her mind racing to comprehend what had just occurred. She had faced something she could never have imagined, something far beyond the ordinary world of her farm, and she had survived. Not because of strength, but because of instinct, quick thinking, and a small stroke of luck. As the alien disappeared into the shimmer of light, Alina sank to her knees, breathing heavily. Her hands shook, not from fear, but from the realization that her life had changed forever. She had faced a being from beyond her world, and though she did not yet understand it fully, she knew that she had discovered something remarkable about herself. She had a strength she had never recognized, a courage born not of skill but of resilience and quick thinking. For the rest of the day, Alina moved through her fields with a new awareness. Every rustle of the wheat, every shadow of the trees, every sound of the wind carried a heightened sense of possibility. She had faced the unknown and survived, and she knew instinctively that this was only the beginning. The alien combatant might return, or other mysteries might come her way, but Alina felt a quiet confidence. She had proven to herself that even in the face of something unimaginable, she could stand her ground. By the evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in shades of red and gold, Alina returned to her farmhouse. She prepared her evening meal with a careful mind, but her thoughts kept returning to the encounter. Who or what had that being been? Why had it come to her farm? And most importantly, what did her survival say about her own strength? She could not answer these questions yet, but she knew one thing clearly. Her life, once predictable and quiet, was now touched by something extraordinary, and she could never see the world the same way again. The morning after the encounter, Alina awoke with the sun streaming through her small window. Birds were singing as usual, and the scent of freshly turned soil drifted in through the open door. Yet despite the peaceful surroundings, she felt a new awareness, a sharpness she had never experienced before. The events of the previous evening played repeatedly in her mind. The strange light, the alien's glowing eyes, the way it had studied, her movements, all of it seemed unreal, yet she knew it had happened. As she stepped out into the field, her hands instinctively brushed over the soil, feeling its texture, noticing small irregularities in the ground. She realized that her own knowledge of the land, how roots twisted beneath the surface where the earth was soft or firm, had given her an advantage during the encounter. Every instinct she had developed through years of farming had suddenly become a tool for survival. The realization filled her with a quiet thrill, a sense that she possessed hidden strengths she had never acknowledged before. Alina spent the morning checking her crops, but she did so with a different mindset. She moved deliberately, observing not just the plants but the patterns in the land. She thought about the way she had reacted when the alien appeared, how she had chosen to run toward cover, how she had swung the hoe without thinking. It had been instinct, yes, but there was also something more, an inner courage, a sharpness of mind that had allowed her to respond under pressure. For the first time, she saw herself not just as a farmer, but as someone capable of extraordinary action when necessary. Word of her strange encounter spread slowly through the nearby village. By mid-morning, a few neighbors had come to check on her, bringing with them questions and cautious curiosity. Alina answered them honestly but carefully, describing the figure she had seen, the glowing eyes and the strange movements. Some listened in awe, some in disbelief, and a few with thinly veiled fear, yet their reactions only confirmed what Alina already felt. Her life was no longer as ordinary as it had been. Despite the curiosity of others, Alina found herself thinking more and more about the alien. Why had it come? Why had it studied her? And why had it retreated rather than attacking fully? The questions swirled in her mind, but they also sparked determination. If such a being could appear in her fields, then her world was far larger and more dangerous than she had ever imagined. And if that was true, she needed to prepare herself, not out of fear, but to understand and respond when needed. She began to test her reactions in small ways, moving quickly through her fields, ducking behind trees, noticing the sound of wind through the wheat, and feeling the shifts in the earth beneath her feet. She experimented with the tools around her, swinging the hoe, tossing stones, and imagining how she might use these simple implements to her advantage if she ever faced the alien again. With each action, she realized that her mind was sharper than she had given it credit for, her instincts faster than she had believed. It was as if the encounter had awakened something dormant within her, a hidden layer of awareness that had always been present, but untested. Alina's animals seemed to sense the change in her. The goats followed her more closely, the chickens stayed calm under her hand, and even the wind in the trees seemed to respond to her movements. She laughed quietly at the thought, realizing that her connection with the land and its creatures had prepared her for challenges far beyond ordinary life. She felt a strange harmony, as if every moment spent tending her farm had been training for this encounter, shaping her body and mind in subtle ways. By afternoon, Alina found a quiet spot near the edge of the forest. She sat on a rock, letting her mind replay the alien's movements in detail. Its steps, its gestures, the way it adjusted its stance. Everything seemed purposeful, precise, as if it had been studying her as much as she had been observing it. Alina realized that she had not just survived by chance. Her knowledge of her surroundings, her quick thinking, and her instincts had allowed her to respond effectively. And in that realization, a sense of pride began to grow. She had faced the unknown and found strength she had never known she possessed. Evening came, and with it a strange sense of calm. The sun dipped below the hills, casting long shadows across the fields. Alina walked slowly back to her farmhouse, reflecting on the day. She realized that she could not ignore the encounter, nor could she dismiss the strength she had discovered within herself. It was not about weapons or training. It was about awareness, courage, and the ability to think quickly when the situation demanded it. She understood now that strength came in many forms, not all of them visible at first glance. That night, she sat by the window, watching the sky as stars began to twinkle above. The strange lights she had noticed before were gone, leaving only the familiar constellations she had always loved. Yet she knew the world had shifted. Her life, once measured by planting and harvesting, caring for animals, and tending to the land, now included the knowledge that she had survived an encounter beyond imagination, and survival, she realized, was only the beginning. Alina began to plan quietly, thinking of ways to prepare herself for the future. She experimented with new ways of moving through the fields, considering how she might use the terrain to her advantage. She thought about the alien's speed, its intelligence, and its ability to adapt quickly. While she did not know when, or if, it might return, she resolved to be ready. She would not wait for chance again. She would turn her instincts and knowledge into deliberate strength. Over the next few days, Alina practiced her reactions. She ran through the fields, testing her speed and balance. She climbed trees and practiced jumping from low branches, imagining scenarios in which agility could save her life. She experimented with her tools, learning how to swing and throw objects with better precision. Even in these exercises, she maintained a connection to the land and animals she loved, understanding that the strength she was building came not from violence but from awareness, strategy, and quick thinking. Her neighbors noticed a change in her as well. Alina moved with confidence, her gaze sharper, her actions more deliberate. There was a quiet energy about her, an inner strength that had always been present but was now visible to those around her. Some admired her, others were cautious, and a few simply wondered what had caused the transformation. Alina did not answer their questions. She knew that this journey was hers alone, and that her preparation was not for show but for survival and understanding. By the end of the week, Alina felt a strange mixture of exhaustion and empowerment. Her muscles ached from practice and her mind was constantly alert. Yet she had never felt more alive. She had faced something unimaginable and emerged stronger, wiser, and more aware of the hidden potential within herself. The alien combatant had shown her a world beyond her farm, a world that demanded courage, quick thinking, and resilience. And Alina knew, deep in her heart, that this was only the beginning of her journey. Alina knew in her heart that the alien might return. The memory of its glowing eyes and silent movements haunted her mind, but instead of fear, she felt determination. She could not rely on luck alone. She had survived once by chance, but the next encounter would demand preparation. With that thought, she began to train herself, using the land she had always known as her ally. She started with agility exercises. Running through the fields, she leaped over small rocks and fallen branches, testing her balance on uneven soil. She practiced ducking and rolling, imagining the alien moving at incredible speed and how she might avoid being caught. She climbed trees, jumping from low branches to the ground, building confidence in her reflexes. Even the simple act of walking quietly through the wheat became an exercise in stealth, training her to move with awareness and precision. Her tools became instruments of practice as well. She swung the wooden hoe with care, learning how to control her strength and aim, imagining different ways she could defend herself if the alien attacked. Stones were tossed into distant areas, not for harm, but to understand trajectories and force. Each movement, each small action, helped Alina understand her own capabilities better. She realized that her strength was not just physical. It came from observation, timing, and knowledge of the environment. At the same time, she studied the signs the alien had left behind, the faint tracks in her field, The areas where the earth had been disturbed and the small burn marks from its wrist device became puzzles she tried to solve. She learned to read these signs like a map, predicting where the alien might appear. Next, her farm, once a place of routine and comfort, now became a training ground, a laboratory for testing strategy and awareness. Alina's animals played a part in her preparation too. She observed how the goats reacted to unusual sounds, how the chickens would move when startled, and how even the wind could carry information. She practiced reacting to these subtle cues, training herself to notice details that might seem insignificant, but could make all the difference in a confrontation. With each passing day, her instincts sharpened, and her awareness of her surroundings grew stronger. Despite the intensity of her preparation, Alina never lost sight of the land she loved. She tended her crops, fed her animals, and cared for the soil, blending her work with her training. The rhythm of her farm life became a form of meditation, allowing her to refine her focus and maintain clarity of mind. Every sunrise brought opportunity. Every sunset brought reflection. She realized that the alien had shown her a hidden strength, and now it was her responsibility to cultivate it fully. By the end of the week, Alina had built a routine that combined daily chores with deliberate preparation. She moved through her farm with confidence, noticing every detail, the shift of the wind, the rustle of leaves, the distant glimmer of light on the horizon. She imagined scenarios, planning how she might respond if the alien returned. Each plan was layered with strategy, grounded in her knowledge of the terrain and strengthened by her growing confidence. Then one night, as the sky darkened and stars blinked into existence, Alina saw a familiar shimmer at the edge of her field. Her heart skipped a beat, but she did not panic. She moved silently, positioning herself behind the trees she had studied for weeks. The alien stepped into the open, its glowing eyes scanning the land. It moved with grace and precision. But this time, Alina was ready. She had studied its movements, anticipated its patterns, and prepared herself. The encounter that had once frightened her now became a test of her own strength and skill. As the alien advanced, Alina felt the culmination of her training. She observed, timed her movements, and reacted with confidence. She was not merely surviving by chance. She was engaging strategically, using every lesson she had learned. The alien, for the first time, seemed surprised by her deliberate responses. Its steps faltered slightly, and Alina realized that her preparation had given her the advantage. She understood in that moment that strength was not just physical power. It was awareness, strategy, and courage combined. The alien paused, its glowing eyes studying her with an intensity that felt almost like respect. Alina held her ground, breathing steadily, her mind sharp and clear. The shimmer in the air seemed to pulse, and she realized that this encounter would be a turning point. Whether the alien attacked or retreated, she had changed. She had discovered a resilience within herself, a capability to face the unknown and respond with skill. And in that realization, she felt a quiet satisfaction. She was no longer the same farmer who had first seen the alien in her fields. She had become something stronger, more aware, and ready for whatever came next. The alien returned in the early morning, moving with a precision that suggested both intelligence and curiosity. Alina had anticipated this moment, and her preparations allowed her to face it without hesitation. Her body was alert, her mind focused, and her instincts sharpened by days of training. She did not panic. Instead, she observed every movement, every subtle shift in posture, and every flicker of light from its devices. The two faced each other across the field, the golden wheat swaying gently between them. Alina's first instinct was to test its reactions. She made a small movement, a step to the left, watching how the alien responded. It mirrored her, but with a slight delay. That fraction of a second gave her insight into its speed and awareness. She smiled slightly, realizing that her careful study of the land and her own abilities had given her an advantage that the alien had not expected. The encounter escalated slowly, each action measured and deliberate. The alien lunged, and Alina dodged, rolling into the wheat and using the terrain to shield herself. She struck with her hoe, not with force but with precision, targeting areas that would disrupt its balance. The alien adapted quickly, but Alina was ready, countering each move with her own strategies. Every swing, every step, every breath was calculated, grounded in the knowledge that she had gained from hours of preparation. As the confrontation continued, Alina noticed something remarkable. The alien was no longer simply an adversary. It was studying her in return. Its movements were cautious, almost respectful. Each action seemed designed to test her further, to understand the limits of her strength and determination. Alina realized that she had become more than a survivor. She was now a worthy opponent, one whose instincts and awareness could challenge a being from another world. The clash reached its peak when Alina used her environment creatively. She led the alien toward a small dip in the field, causing it to misstep slightly. In that moment, she struck with her hoe not to harm but to demonstrate her skill. The alien stumbled and paused, its glowing eyes meeting hers. There was a silent understanding between them, a recognition of each other's strength. Alina felt a rush of pride and relief. She had survived, adapted, and proven herself in a way she could never have imagined. When the encounter ended, the alien stepped back and gave a slight nod. There was no attack, no sudden retreat, just acknowledgement. It seemed to recognize her capabilities, perhaps even respecting her for them. Alina watched as it moved toward the shimmer in the air and disappeared, leaving her alone in the field. She felt a mixture of exhaustion and triumph. She had faced the unknown, not by luck, but by preparation, intelligence, and courage. As she walked back to her farmhouse, the sun rose higher in the sky, bathing the land in golden light. Alina reflected on everything she had learned, the importance of awareness, the value of preparation, and the hidden strength that lay within her. She realized that her life had changed forever. She was no longer simply a farmer. She was someone capable of extraordinary resilience, someone who could face challenges that others might never understand. Over the following days, Alina continued her work on the farm, but with a new mindset. She was vigilant, aware that the alien might return, but she was no longer afraid. Each sunrise brought opportunity, each sunset brought reflection, and each moment was a chance to grow stronger. She had discovered a hidden strength, one that could not be taken away, and she knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, she would face them with courage and determination. Alina's life had once been quiet and predictable, measured by the cycles of planting and harvesting, feeding animals and caring for the land. Now it was defined by awareness, resilience, and the knowledge that she had the capability to survive and thrive even in the face of the unknown. The alien had come into her life by chance, but the strength she discovered within herself was entirely her own. She smiled as she looked over her fields, feeling a deep connection to the land, the sky, and the vast possibilities of the world beyond. Whatever came next, she knew she was ready.